So, Tsui, Hark?
Yes.
That was close?
Yes, very close.
The movie is called Detective DEE in the United States, but it's Detective DEE and the Mystery of the Phantom Flame is the full title.
Right.
And Detective DEE, even though this sounds like a fantastical detective story modeled after Sherlock Holmes, it's actually based in a real event, a real person back in 680 or 90 AD in China when there was the first empress of a Chinese dynasty.
Right.
So you started your career back in the 70s. Your very first film, I understand, was a detective story.
Right.
So do you feel like you're going back to your roots?
Sort of like a little bit the revisit of what I want to do in the early years. Actually, the detective in my first debut film was also on the case of very mysterious murdering butterflies. It was also very peculiar topic, but I think it's very strange. Somehow it has some kind of similarity between Detective D with the character I have in the past. But Detective D was a real person in history, and also Empress Wu was a real person in history. That's why I make it more interesting.
In the notes, I think it says Empress Wu was ruthlessly ambitious. She murdered 2 of her children, and I guess she reigned for 15 years. You have her being ruthless, definitely, and power hungry. But at the end of your movie, without giving too much away, you restore order and allow her to ascend to the throne rather than prevent her by what has been going on in the movie. Can you talk a little bit about this resolution? It's almost Shakespearean in the sense that...
In a way, yes, in a way. Because we always tied tyranny with, a very ruthless kind of method to control the people against, the authority. Empress Wu was exactly the kind of character who would fight, to the last drop of blood to destroy the people who were against her. So this is why it caused a lot of controversial angle to look at this character in the history. Some people said she's really a dictator. She was really bad. She was like an icon for all this bad political, like a symbol. But then another school would praise her as a very capable ruler who have pushed along the Tang Dynasty into a more prosperous stage of the politics. So these sort of things it was controversial all along these years. I read the book against her. I read the book who was talking about good thing about her. So when we made this movie, I think the Chinese government was very sensitive about this. That's why we have 5 professors lined up to read the script and told us what to do, what they thought that was not appropriate, what it was appropriate. So we have this story here on the screen.
So this is, in other words, you're saying the screenplay is vetted before you're allowed to film, and this is obviously, it looks like a very expensive film, and also with a lot of digital work.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about, you've been making movies now for 30 years.
Yes,
how your style has changed with the idea of being able, you have such a fantastic imagination for what we see. The martial arts sequences are amazing, but Hong Kong since the 70s sort of pioneered the idea of wire work and this kind of fantastic martial arts sequences. How has digital cinema changed the way you work and expanded your vocabulary or your imagination? Or
I think it's getting more and more convenient for us to do things that we couldn't do before. like some of the wire work, for example, some of the removal of the wire in the shot was a very critical things that we have to, a problem issue that we have to face in the past.
So you would use smoke and film it at night and that kind of things?
We use all sort of, like a way, a method to overcome the problem we have. But now we have, the technology, we have the computer, thing to erase the wire work. So the wire getting bigger and bigger. And if sometime you will get complaint from the post-production house, asking us not to have so thick and wire, so they have a problem of taking them away from the shot. But I think technology and time would provide us a lot of convenience in terms of tell a story and create an interesting visual. But at the same time, I think the audience also demanding more, because in the past, basically they would not have enough, so much to see on the screen. Now they see more and they demand more. So even now it's more convenient to do something that we couldn't do before, but yet I think we have more difficult thing to face. Like what we see now is they wouldn't take something like as simple as 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They want something really, really big. And especially the younger generation, they already gone through this game culture.
The video game culture.
Video game culture. I think they are more demanding in terms of the design of the action on the screen.
Well, you have a giant construction of a Buddha, a standing Buddha. It's sort of going to be a shrine to the Empress, and it's near the palace, and we are in the center of it. Now that's primarily a digital effect.
That was actually the digital effect.
And it reminded me, in terms of the scale and everything, of something we'd think in Hollywood of Cecil B. DeMille in his glory days with the Ten Commandments or something. It's so where do you come up with the ideas for this with your production team? I mean, does everybody sit around and get stoned and say, or do you come in and say, I have a dream, I saw this last night in my dream? It's so amazing, really.
Well, one of the dramatic reasons is because we have to really depict the kind of visions or the what do you call this power, hunger, character, Empress Wu. To present her character, we have blow up an eagle as big as the giant Buddha. That's one of the simple symbolic thing that I think is very important in the story to present the character. Sort of to contrast Detective DEE. Detective DEE is supposed to be a prisoner released for the case to investigate on the case, and while you have this very powerful figures. The Empress Wu, who's actually being very, very observing what's going on, what detective gonna do. He's gonna kill detective anytime. So this is kind of dramatic symbol we impose on the story in order to create the character more in a very strong image. The second reason, because actually there was in the book, in the history, that was a giant Buddha in the vicinity of the palace. Exactly what we have done was made in the movies. So that was actually according to history. So these two reasons, that's why we have the Buddha